Hi guys, my name is Cameron and I'm a psychotherapist here in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm an Australian, I guess you can tell from the accent. Hopefully you'll like that. I guess they do here in this country. Anyway, I'd like to do a little bit of a talk about stress and how it affects our lives and how we can recognize it and how once recognized we can do something about it, and then I'll go into a couple of specific approaches that I can make available as a professional for you. So, stress is linked as a cofactor to 95% of all diseases, and that's a lot. And so, as you could imagine, learning how to effectively manage stress is going to help us thrive and find wellness. And so, I guess the first thing that we think of is what are what are the stresses in our lives, okay? And there's four of them, four kinds of stress. There's physical stress associated with trauma, associated with substance abuse, illness, overexertion, anything physical is going to be a stress on our lives, okay? Then there's psychological stress, which is emotional, stress, anxiety, information overload, feeling out of control, also underlying past trauma or inherited family dysfunction. These are all psychological stresses that we could be experiencing in our lives. Um, there's psychosocial stress, which is, things like relationship problems, marriage difficulties, um, lack of social support, isolation, things like that. And then we've got the psycho-spiritual stress, which is kind of existential, a crisis of values, um, the need to find meaning and purpose in our lives, feeling like we're striving joylessly for things that we don't really believe in. And so these are also, that's the fourth kind of stress, okay? And now, if it's improperly or ineffectively managed, stress usually takes a toll on our body. In layman's terms, if we're feeling stressful, we're going to get sick because stress needs to be released. And that's the key idea, I guess, here. Because if we don't release stress and process it, could be another word that we could use for it. I guess psychotherapists like that word. Then what's the result? What we call psychogenic illness, which is an illness created by the stress that we're not processing. And as I know, all of you probably know and imagine that prolonged stress can result in suppressed immune function and an increased susceptibility to infectious and immune-related diseases and cancer. Layman's terms, prolonged stress not dealt with makes you sick, can cause you to die. So it's not a good thing. And one thing that I guess psychotherapists really believe in is reinforcing the idea of bringing in that you're the most important thing in your life and that you can't be of service to someone else or something else unless you are serving yourself and taking care of yourself. It's no, helping others is it's no good to them if you're dead. That seems a pretty radical thing to say, but there are many of us who are really great at serving and helping others, our families, our community, achieving financial rewards, but we've forgotten that our physical and emotional health and well-being is the most important thing. It's the most important thing in our lives. And so when we put that at priority one and we're able to recalibrate the important things in our lives, then we start to get happy, because if we're being served, it means that we've decided that we're important, and when you're important, that makes others important. It's kind of a strange function. You would think it would work the other way, that making others more important um, would be the solution. But in fact, if you're devaluating your own importance, what you teach is that others aren't important either. Anyway, I'll move on. So how do you manage stress, manifest stress in your life? Well, there's five ways. There's 5 ways that it manifests, okay? So we've got the cognitive way, which is I'm stressed, I have anxious thoughts, I'm fearfully anticipating things, I get poor concentration, difficulty with memory. So these are the cognitive ways, so based on thoughts. Okay, stress can change our thoughts. Now, emotionally, what happens? Stressed, feeling tension, irritability, restlessness, I'm worried, I have an inability to relax, I have depression. These are the ways that stress can impact us emotionally. Then there's the behavioral things where, okay, what do? We avoid tasks. We have sleep problems. We have difficulty in completing work assignments. We fidget. We have tremors, strained faces, clenched fists, holding it all in our body. Actually, that's physiological. And then, problems with eating behaviors, smoking behaviors, substance abuse behaviors. I think that's a really big one, isn't it? Substance abuse is a way of coping with stress for a lot of us. It's called self-medication. Moving on, then we've got the physiological. I touched on a little bit then, but before we've got tension headaches, stiff muscles. All you massage therapists know all about that. Loss of interest in sex, tiredness, weight loss or gain. These are all how they affect our bodies. And then the last one is social. So what happens when we're feeling stressed? Some of us retreat into a crowd and try to get lost in a crowd. Some of us retreat and withdraw under stress. And so socially, stress is going to cause us to alter the way we wanna act. And as we all know, we're a social animal, and we need to nurture the social aspects of who we are. And if stress is causing us to alter our social relationships, then it actually causes stress in itself, because we're not getting the nourishment. And this is the case with other things too. They tend to be a self-feeding wheel where our coping mechanisms, especially things like substance abuse, actually cause the stress to increase. Some of us believe that, having a drink is going to make us feel less anxious. But actually it increases anxiety in the long run. And drinking also, people might think I have a drink to get to sleep at night because I'm feeling so stressed and anxious. Well, actually, drinking and alcohol interrupts healthy sleep cycles, so you actually get less effective sleep and less. So in the end, it's actually creating more of a problem, even though you think you're solving these issues. And this is where where I come in, or someone like me. The therapeutic relationship is designed to focus on you, on your life, and really look at these areas and help locate the cause. And once you've got the cause and not dealing with symptoms, then you can deal with those things. And so how do we do it? Well, There are other professionals for the physical things and things like that, but what we do is cognitive and emotional. And what I can do is create a wellness plan for you, and we'll look at all the stresses in your life and really look at where the imbalances are and how we can begin to locate the causes and work on changing through a number of ways. One of them is called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really just working on your thoughts and your belief systems and things like that. I won't go too deeply into that. We also can do mindfulness exercises. I'm sure you've heard that word, but mindfulness can be a very effective way to, deal with issues at their cause. We also have a technique called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR for short. It's a relatively new technique in the psychotherapy canon. And what it does is basically reprocesses memories. Now, at this point, I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma and memories. So trauma is another one of these stressors that we can have running in our background. Because what happens with the human being is if we're in a crisis or a traumatic situation, what imprints in our memory situation is the memory that happening is bad. It's it's a developmental process to teach us what's good and what's bad. And so if we have a memory that something bad has happened, then when we have that thought, or if we run into that encounter, or encounter that experience, then we remember that it's bad. Okay, so but what can happen to us as adults is that we've matured out of the need for these things to be effective in our lives, and we're running a bunch of traumatized memory programs cycling in the background, and this is what PTSD functions as. And so what we can do now is we can get involved in EMDR is one way to do it, but what we do is raise those memories back up to conscious awareness and reprogram chemically, electrically, the associated memories with these trauma. So instead of re-experiencing traumas that we've had in our past, which is what we do, because our mind can't tell the difference between whether or not it's happening now or whether or not it's a historical representation. What we'll do is we can actually deprogram the electrical and chemical associations in your brain with a traumatic memory that still is causing trauma, and clear out the memory associations with it, so that now it becomes just a story instead of what we would call in psychotherapy as is a trigger. And I'm sure you've probably known what a trigger is in your life. You'll have a memory of something and all of a sudden you'll have an intense reaction. And to a very exacerbated state, that's what PTSD is. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. And notice there's the word stress in there. So that really comes under the umbrella of what we're talking about. And so we can really deal with these issues. Okay, so here's what I can do. I can be of service in a number of ways. We can do therapy one-on-one, we can do family therapy, which can be incredibly helpful, and couples therapy, if what we've decided is that some of the stresses that we're experiencing are associated with our family relationships, our job relationships, all these things. So we can do family, couples, we can do individual therapy. I can also consult, and I can do presentations and workshops in the business community. So, for example, I could come in if you have a workplace issue that we could deal with, or we could just do a general talk at a lunchtime gathering of employees, and we can do an exercise in mindfulness or something like that that helps everyone recognize that stress exists in their lives, recognize that there's ways that we can change that and help it, and give us some positive outcomes. Now, just as a side note to employers, this is actually, it seems like an indulgence maybe financially, but it actually saves you money in the long run, because the research has shown us that if we effectively engage in mental health care proactively with our clients, and if they're employers, they're saving money because they don't have unhappy workers, they don't have sick workers as a result of that psychogenic illness, and they have communicative workers who work better, they're happier, and everyone gets along. Okay, so that's my discussion in a nutshell. If you'd like to learn more, my website is cktherapy.com, cktherapy.org, and drop me a line, and I would love to help your life become a life that's thriving.